Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. I've had some recent experiences lately with new electric vehicle drivers that, let me just start out by saying really you don't want to be charging to 100% on public DC fast charging. It's not really helpful on most trips and it's a huge waste of time. And more importantly, it blocks really what's a limited resource right now for all EV owners. So the more effectively we can leverage this resource, the better off we are, because really there aren't enough chargers right now to allow people to occupy them for hours. And that's essentially what you're doing. When you charge an electric vehicle, almost any electric vehicle really past about 85 to 90% on a DC fast charger, at that point it almost becomes the same speed as a level 2 AC charger, basically the type that most people have in their garage. And so when you're at home, that doesn't make much of a difference, right? You're charging to 100%. The fact that it takes you 2 hours to go from 90% to 100% doesn't make a huge difference in that circumstance. But when you're on the road on a trip, the fact that it might take you an extra hour or so to go from 90% to 100% on a DC fast charger, where it only takes an hour to go from 0% to 80%, well, that's a big difference, right? And it slows down trips, but yeah, I seem to notice a lot of new EV drivers doing it. Now, I've heard comments that yes, there are cases where either there's not enough redundancy in the public charging network, or their distance between charging sites is still too far, and to make it comfortably or safely, people want to go up to 100%. And I understand that completely as well. And if you're going to do that, though, just make sure that you stay with your vehicle and you move it when you're done, and recognize that it's going to be very costly both in terms of time and money to do so. EVgo, they're one of the most reasonably costed public charging providers. And I recently saw a Bolt EV owner who was spending about $1.25 per kilowatt hour just for the ability to charge to 100%. And I know the route, I know where they were. There's really no call for it, given the conditions, given the state of the infrastructure. There's no direction you could be driving a Bolt EV from that point where you would need a 100% battery. I think new electric vehicle owners would benefit from being educated on the benefits and costs of charging to a lower state in your battery than charging to a higher state or to 100%, but also just reinforcing that sort of public charging etiquette where if you are going to be occupying a charger because you need to get a really, really high battery, well, make sure you're actually with your vehicle so that you can move it to accommodate other vehicles. DC fast charger cords are shorter, they're harder to access adjacent parking spaces. So you can essentially just block someone out from being able to access a charger if you're just parked there plugged in. You really do have to be active and present when using these. In that way, DC fast chargers aren't really dissimilar to gas stations, where if you're pumping gasoline, you need to be active and present at the gas pump. You don't just put the nozzle in your gas tank and walk off for 15 or 20 minutes and then come back. Granted, DC fast chargers take a longer time than filling up a gas tank, but the concept is still the same. If you have a 30 or 40 or 50-minute session, you need to plan your stops so that you return by the time your session would be ending. So you're not just sitting there occupying. And you have options too with certain platforms like EVgo where the session does time out after 45 minutes or an hour, or 30 minutes if you're not a member, where you can go through the app and reactivate the charge session. And that's something that you can do without having to return to your vehicle, but it does mean that you're actively monitoring your vehicle. This is going to be really important moving forward because even in California, our public charging infrastructure is just barely capable of keeping up with the current electric vehicle population. A year and a half ago, I would make my 500-mile trips and I would rarely see anybody at any of these DC fast chargers if you were more than 100 miles away from a city center. Now, it doesn't matter. I can be in the middle of nowhere and I'll come to a DC fast charging location with two chargers, and as often as not, I'm going to see a Bolt EV or some of these other longer range electric vehicles plugged in and charging, or ending their charge session or whatnot. And so things are getting more crowded, and they're only going to get even more crowded in the future as more and more of these electric vehicles hit the roads. The good thing is programs like Electrify America are expanding very, very rapidly, even more so than Tesla is. Programs like the CEC Grant Fund, New York is opening up an electric fast charging corridor, Virginia as well, Utah, all sorts of states are funding these electric fast charging corridors. So the uptake of electric vehicles should be covered by those corridors, but it still only works if you're not occupying that space for long periods of time and blocking other people out, right? Nobody would tolerate a car just parked at a gas pump on a busy holiday weekend for 30, 40, 50 minutes, which is essentially what you're doing if your charge session ends and you're nowhere to be found for a half hour or an hour after it ends. This is something that I think is also on us as electric vehicle owners. I feel like most of the people who watch this channel are probably more experienced electric vehicle owners. And I think it's something that we as a community can encourage new electric vehicle owners to adopt in terms of just sort of etiquette and just common courtesy, because it's going to make the ownership experience for electric vehicles far more positive for everybody involved. And like I said, really for new owners too, they're going to be cutting 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer trips, 2 or 3 hours off of their overall trip time by only charging up to what's needed between charging stops rather than charging up to 100% every time they stop at a DC fast charger. I'd love to hear what you think, what your experiences have been. Have you encountered this as well? Like I said, for me, it's becoming more apparent, and it's something that I feel like as a community we can affect this just as a sort of a cultural shift as people learn more about their electric vehicles moving forward. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. It helps me do these sorts of videos, and thank you for watching.